Can we kill our opponent this turn? Seems a little unlikely.
Explosives primed.
Oh, was that our Captain Farron? Wow, what were the odds? Wait a minute. Hey everyone, Raptor Spank here. Today we have another episode of On the Grind, the show where I cover a deck I'm playing in Ranked. I'll break down the deck, a couple of flex spots, and some basic mulligans. Then we'll put the deck through some ranked matches and review how we do afterwards. This episode will be checking out how Bilgewater Burn does in the post-patch 1.11 world. The goal is simple: leverage low-cost, high-powered units and burn cards to kill our opponents as fast as possible. Let's start with the champion package. This starts with 3 copies of Misfortune. The 3 cost 3/3. When allies attack, deal 1 to all battling enemies in the enemy nexus, and she levels up when she's seen you attack 4 times. Then she becomes a 4/4 and deals 1 3 times, and she gains Overwhelm. Her champion spell is Make It Rain, the 2-cost fast spell. Deal 1 3 times among differently randomly targeted enemies in the enemy nexus. This is not a Misfortune deck. That is the most important thing to get here. Her earliest possible level up is turn 9. And she doesn't live till then, usually. So this is not the goal. Don't feel like you have to protect her in order to level her up. In fact, in over 60 games I've played with this in Ranked, in Masters alone, plus another 10 in Diamond, like getting to Masters, I have seen her level up once, maybe twice. So that's just one quick thing to note, is don't be afraid to throw her away, essentially. The big reason she's in the deck is that the trigger forces damage through really, really well, and it establishes really bad blocks for our opponents / protects our attackers, because if all they have is 1 health units, she's going to shred through them and our units will be safe. So we'll force that 1 damage through and wipe their board. And it just basically sets us up to keep getting good attacks, or just killing their bigger units that we wouldn't be able to otherwise, but the extra damage helps us get through. And she's a solid body on her own since she's a 3/3. Also, her champion spell, Make It Rain, we already run 3 copies of that in our deck, so more copies of it, not a bad thing. I'll go into that more, though, when we reach Make It Rain. Then we have 3 copies of Gangplank, the 5-cost 5/5 Overwhelm. When you summon him, he summons a powder keg, and he levels up once you've damaged the enemy nexus in 5 different rounds, at which point he becomes a 6/6, and every round start he summons a keg, and whenever he attacks, he deals 1 to all enemies and the enemy nexus. His champion spell is Parley, a 1-cost slow spell, deal 1 to anything. If this kills it, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. This is, however, a Gangplank deck. It's super easy to level up Gangplank, and he's definitely our best payoff card for the deck. Essentially, with Overwhelm, he can force a lot of damage through on his own. If you do level him up, the trigger is a massive payoff, especially since he creates his own powder kegs to make that payoff even better. So he definitely is one of those cards that will just take over the matchup and finish our opponent off pretty quickly. It's just basically everything our deck wants to do. The trigger forces damage through, the overwhelm forces damage through. He's really hard to kill. He has a lot of health, so we can deal damage to him to deal damage to our opponent with Demolitionist and Sleep with the Fishes. So he's just a great final card to finish our opponent off. Now let's look at the follower package. This starts with 3 copies of Jagged Butcher. The 1 costs 2/2. Plunder, grant me +1/+1. This is our largest body 1-drop, even bigger if we can trigger Plunder. It curves nicely into Demolitionist. Since it has 2 health, you can hit it with Demolitionist and it'll still live. Don't be afraid to play him without Plunder, however, especially if it's turn 1. You absolutely always want to be playing a 1-drop on turn 1 if that's possible. So even if you have Jagged Butcher and that's your only 1-drop, still play it on turn 1. It's definitely worth it. We want to get off to the races as fast as possible, and so there's very little benefit to holding it if that means giving up a turn we could have dealt damage. Then we have 3 copies of Legion Saboteur. The 1 costs 2/1. Attack, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. This is our highest damage turn 1, essentially. As long as our opponent has no response, this will force 3 damage through, as opposed to the 2 damage from Jagged Butcher and our other 1-drop. So this is our highest damage potential, and because of the trigger, it forces damage through 9 out of 10 times. Sometimes our opponent might try to essentially deny the trigger, because that's about the only option they have, but that's such a huge swing for us that essentially this will always force some damage through. Then we have 3 copies of Precious Pet, a 1 cost 2/1 with Fearsome. This is our safest turn 1, since Fearsome makes it incredibly hard to block, especially on turn 1, but throughout all of the early turns, it should be pretty hard for our opponent to actually block Precious Pets, so it should be able to attack safely. However, it can be kind of bad into decks that are going to use stuff like Vile Feast and Unspeakable Horror, because they can kill it pretty easily on turn 2. It's just, generally speaking, one of the better 1-drops we can have because of the fact that it forces so much damage through. Then we have 3 copies of Imperial Demolitionist. The 2 cost 2/3. Play, deal 1 to an ally, deal 2 to the enemy nexus. This is a nice, cheap nexus burn, essentially, which also comes with a pretty solid body since it has 3 health, so it's also really great to deal damage to deal damage to our opponent's nexus. Unfortunately, most of our units can't survive it, at least our 1-drop units, so it's pretty bad on turn 2 because Butcher's the only thing that could have come first that can take the hit, and then there's just a lot of things that have a low amount of health, so this can kill it. But since it deals damage straight to the nexus, even through blockers, it's definitely worth running all 3. Then we have 3 copies of Legion Grenadier. The 2 cost 3/2. Last Breath, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. This is a great body at low cost, can block Fearsome, it deals damage even if blocked, and it can really help to level our GP up even quicker, since we can always block with it on our opponent's attack. Then it dies and deals 1 to our opponent's nexus. Now we've done damage this turn, even though we couldn't attack. So it's just a pretty big all-star for the deck, and you can always hit it with Demolitionist and still have it live, so it's just a really great turn 2 for us. Then we have a replacement for Petty Officer, the 3 copies of Monkey Idol. The 3 cost 0/5 with Immobile, round start, deal 2 to me, and summon a Powder Monkey. Now, why are we running this instead of Petty Officer? With the nerf to Petty Officer, it's actually kind of bad because we were really looking to hit Petty Officer with Demolitionist. Like, that happened in a lot of my games. I would hit Petty Officer but still have the body and all that. And now he dies to Demolitionist, and that is big enough, in my opinion, to replace him with something else. Now, Monkey Idol is so good at leveling GP, and that's the big reason we're running this, because it creates a Powder Monkey every turn, so every turn we're dealing damage to our opponent's nexus. That means we hit that GP level up so quickly, and as previously mentioned, that just closes it out the game so incredibly fast. Our opponent has a hard time dealing with GP in basically any matchup. And it basically lets us block and buy ourselves time without losing anything for it, because we're just going to get a Powder Monkey on the turn we can't attack, so why not block with it? Save us some damage, essentially. And on the attack, 1 more unit to attack with, and we don't really care what happens to it, so it's really great if we don't want to lose any units. We can just swing with this because it's going to die anyways, which is good at triggering, say, MF, if we've got that going too. So it's just a really great value card for us. Then we have 3 copies of Zap Sprayfin. The 4 cost 2/2 with Elusive and Attune. Summon, draw a spell that costs 3 or less from deck. This is a safe attacker, essentially, because of Elusive. That means he can force damage through pretty easily. It also draws a burn spell to keep our engine running, i.e. Make It Rain or Noxian Fervor. Those are our only hits. And if our opponent is putting up a bunch of or really big elusive threats that are going to beat our clock, we can always use this to block in a pinch. Or to just prevent our opponent from triggering Plunder if they're a deck where that matters, like the TF deck. Then we have 3 copies of Jack the Winner. The 5 costs 5/5. Round start, create a Sleep with the Fishes in hand. This is the all-star card for the deck. This is honestly one of the best cards in the deck. Gangplank might be slightly better, but it's really hard to say. And even after the nerf to Jack the Winner, this is still an amazing card, still an easy 3 of, without a doubt. It generates a ton of Nexus Burn that costs 0, so we can get it in a lot of turns. This can be used to level up GP very easily as well, or even if we have Jack the Winner and we play GP and our GPs have 4 or 5, even if we go into our attack turn, we can now Sleep with the Fishes to level up Gangplank before he attacks, so we still get the trigger before he attacks, so that's really good, and it won't waste any of our mana to do that. He's a massive body on his own as a 5/5, so he can always Sleep with the Fishes, hit himself, or he can just survive through a lot of attacks or blocks, so just in general, this card is nuts. Finally, we have 1 copy of Captain Farron. The 8 costs 8/8 with Overwhelm. Summon, create 3 Decimates in hand. This is a giant body with Overwhelm, so that's already a huge threat on its own, but the real value here is that it creates a ton of direct Nexus burn in hand. With 3 Decimates, that should be enough to close out most games. This is just a great silver bullet that can steal a game out of nowhere, and it just can also be the final nail in our coffin if our opponent has somehow managed to stabilize, and then we land this massive 8/8, and now they've got no hope, essentially. It's our last-ditch Hail Mary, basically. Now let's look at the spell package. This starts with 3 copies of Make It Rain, the 2-cost fast spell, deal 1 3 times among different randomly targeted enemies and the enemy nexus. This helps us to force damage through. It can level up our GP by using on, say, turn 2 to hit our opponent's nexus if we can't attack. It boosts our effectiveness of Misfortune, since now we could potentially do 2 damage to our opponents before they actually get to combat damage, so that could make it so that often we kill the unit without risking our own units. It's just a very great low-cost way to trigger a number of things for a deck or deal direct nexus damage. It's also great against barrier for stripping barrier off things so that we can actually deal damage to them. It's an all-around great card. Next up, we have 3 copies of Noxian Fervor, the 3-cost fast spell, deal 3 to an ally to deal 3 to anything. This is a great way to blast the enemy nexus. 3 damage is a ton of damage to do, and if we're going to lose a unit anyways, it's not that risky. Like, we swing with Saboteur, they block it, so we just throw Saboteur at them for even more damage since we were going to lose it anyways. We can even use it on stuff like Gangplank or Jack without even losing the unit and still dealing the damage. And the real value of Noxian Fervor is that we can use it on a blocker to prevent lifesteal. If our opponent swings with a lifestealer, we can block, and then Noxian Fervor whatever blocks, so they don't deal damage, and we still deal damage to our opponent's nexus. Also, it serves as removal if we absolutely have to kill something. If there's something that's too big of a threat for us to just try to outrun it, then we can always use Fervor to kill it. And a nice little combo we can do with this, we can always use it on a keg to essentially lose nothing if our opponent can't kill the keg, because then it just kills the keg that would have died anyways to the Fervor, and then we'll deal the extra 4 damage to whatever we're targeting. Finally, we have 3 copies of Decimate, the 5-cost slow spell, deal 4 to the enemy nexus. This is the largest direct nexus spell we have. It deals a ton of damage to our opponent's nexus. It's a little bit expensive mana-wise, but it's a great way to close out the game through some awkward board states, like our opponent building up a bunch of units, essentially. And with kegs, this can deal even more damage. And it can also be used on off turns to level up Gangplank if we're having a hard time leveling them out. But this is just primarily there to close out our game, because we can often get our opponent down to like 3 to 4 health, and then this is just the final answer that's pretty hard for any non-Ionian deck to deal with. Now let's go over a couple of flex spots for the deck. First off, we can always switch Monkey Idol for the 3 copies of Petty Officer again, the 3-cost 3/1, play Summon a Keg or a random 1-cost follower. It's the old card, it's still good for go-wide strategies, and it has the added flexibility of Powder Keg. The Powder Keg can always boost damage for spells and all that stuff. It's not a bad card. It's just I prefer Monkey Idol now after the nerfs, because the big downside is it can no longer live through Demolitionist, and that's kind of a problem. And sometimes the 1-cost can, but not always. So it just kind of makes some of the other cards in our deck worse now because of that fact, and it dies pretty easily on its own. So I've preferred to go with the new option instead. You can always replace the Petty Officer / Monkey Idol with 3 copies of Iron Ballista. It's a 3-cost 4/3 with Overwhelm. It's just a strong 3-cost, essentially, and it can force a lot of damage through because of Overwhelm. 3 health isn't a ton. I mean, it's better than everything else in the deck for the most part, but it does die pretty easily, so that's kind of the downside, and it's like a singular threat, so you don't really get the go-wide aspect. But it is still pretty good, and can trade with most things that block it, as well as it can block itself to kill a number of important things, so it's not a bad choice. You can also go 3 copies of House Spider, the 2-cost 2/2, summon a Spiderling. This lets us mimic the go-wide of Petty Officer while keeping a 2 health unit for Demolitionist, so that's pretty strong. It also comes down a turn earlier than Officer, which is great. But it's got weaker overall units and only a vanilla 1/1 rather than a random 1-cost, so we won't get that added aspect of occasionally getting some really bomb 1-drops. And it also can't make a keg or something like that, so it's less flexible. But generally speaking, it's still a great card if you're really worried about going wide or having a number of units and still being able to deal a fair bit of burn. Or finally, you can go with 3 copies of Hired Gun instead, the 2-cost 2/3. Summon, grant, strongest enemy vulnerable. Helps to establish good attacks. Since we get to choose what that largest enemy blocks, we can always force them to worse units, like, say, swinging with a Hired Gun, pulling them over, and so our Saboteur gets through and gets extra damage through and can attack another turn. It just lets us align blocks how we want, essentially, while also giving us a pretty solid-sized unit since it has 3 health. So it's great for following up with Demolitionist and things like that, too, or it survives the sleep with the fishes. It's just great for a number of value things like that, all at a low cost. The big downside is that it doesn't go wide or make a keg, so it just lets us align attacks how we want, but it doesn't actually give us that added flexibility or the wide board state. We can also drop 2 to 3 Make It Rain for 2 to 3 copies of Brother's Bond, the 2-cost burst spell that grants 2 allies +2/+0. This is extremely fast since it's a very low cost damage pump and it can accelerate the clock. It's great on early pets since our opponent probably can't block it, as we previously mentioned, so this can force a ton of damage through, especially if we have like double precious pet. It can do so much damage. It's great against things like ramp decks because they often don't have a turn 1, turn 2 play, so we can usually get a free attack on turn 1, turn 3, or turn 2, and this allows us to get a ton of extra damage through that we wouldn't be able to otherwise, and just really kill our opponent pretty quickly. The problem is it can't deal the damage directly like Make It Rain can, so if they have removal spells like Withering Wail or like Vile Feast or stuff like that, that will kill our units and prevent Brother's Bond from doing essentially anything. So it's actually kind of a bad top deck too at times, so this is why I prefer the Make It Rains. We can also drop Farron and Decimates or Jax for 1 to 3 copies of Riptide Rex. The 8-cost 7/4 Plunder casts Cannon Barrage 7 times on randomly targeted enemies. This is a great late game drop that can board wipe / force damage through. There's lots of ways to trigger Plunder in the deck. It's a large body on its own. It's just a really great finisher for the deck if you want to go that route. The problem is, it's high cost at 8 mana, and you have to trigger Plunder. If you can't trigger Plunder, this card is basically useless. Like, it's just a 7/4 vanilla, which isn't very threatening, and it's pretty easy for our opponent to kill. So you really have to play around trying to keep a way to trigger Plunder in your hand, leading into the Riptide turn. We can also drop Farron for 1 copy of the Dreadway, 9-cost 4/8 with Fearsome, double all damage dealt by your skills, spells, and allies, play, draw GP. This is another great late game payoff like Farron is, but instead of getting burn spells, this just makes every other card in our deck way better. I mean, like, now Decimate deals 8 damage rather than 4. Like, that's crazy. That's insane, and it's on a great body, too. And it also finds our Gangplank, which we already talked about how much of a nuts card that is for a deck, so it's just a great payoff, and it's just a huge body, like I said, on its own, so it's hard for our opponent to kill it. The problem is, it doesn't give us direct Nexus damage, so it won't just kill our opponent right then and there, usually. So it can be a bit too slow, so it's great for slow decks or slow matchups, but it's going to be really punished in faster matchups, essentially. So that's why I prefer to go with Farron over that, because while it's also slow, it gives so much direct Nexus damage that no matter what, if our opponent's building a wide board or if they've run us out of cards, this is going to give us cards that close out the game. Whereas, like, if you're against Control where they've been killing a lot of your stuff and you just land a Dreadway, now you've got a GP in hand, but that might be it. And they might have plenty of ways to block Dreadway to prevent it from actually dealing damage. Now let's talk about some basic mulligans. You basically always want to have 1 to 3 1-drops, so you never want to really pitch a 1-drop unless you've got a really great curve out for the matchup. Often 3 1-drops is one of the most insane things you could have and will basically beat any deck if you're going like turn 1 Saboteur swing into like turn 2 Precious Pet Saboteur, then you swing again the next turn like right off the bat for, was that like 8 damage plus the 3 you already did. Like, that clocks people so quick. So you basically always want to have at least 1 1-drop, but duplicates are fine. You don't want to have 4. If you have 4, then you pitch one of them, whichever one you think is going to be the worst in the matchup. You also basically want to pitch any opening turn Demolitionist, unless you've got something that goes well with it, like turn 2 Grenadier into turn 3 1-drop Demolitionist. That's fine, but generally speaking, Demolition is better as a top deck than as something in your starting hand, since a lot of our early drops will die to it, and we don't want to do that. Also, you can keep a decent curve, like 1-drop into Grenadier into Misfortune. That's a pretty solid hand, so you can keep something like that where it's going to curve out into a fair amount of damage, or just good things for the matchup. Monkey Idol is great in slower games, but also on turns or games where you're going to be attacking on the second and fourth turn rather than the first and third. You can do it on first and third as well. It just means that on your turn 3, you're not going to actually be generating any additional damage from your attack. but it will mean you get to block on your opponent's attack. But generally speaking, this is going to be better if it's like turn 3, we can't do damage to our opponent anyway, so might as well play Monkey Idol. Next turn we'll have an extra attacker, that sort of thing. So it's good to do that, but you almost never want to keep more than one Monkey Idol. You only really want to have the one. Now, Noxian Fervor is a great card to keep if you're playing against decks where you're expecting a Radiant Guardian or decks where they're running Fiora, because you can use the Fervor to kill whatever Fiora is challenging or whatever the Radiant Guardian's attacking into and prevent the lifesteal or the game-winning trigger, essentially. As well as the fact that Fervor can just kill Fiora if they play risky, essentially. So Fervor is great in those matchups. If you find it against either of those decks, you should definitely keep it. Make It Rain is good against low health units or barrier units, so it's good against like the Fiora Shen deck because you can rip barrier off the units to at least ensure that they trade. It's also great against things like, say, potentially Ender tokens, although Curse Keeper makes it a little bit worse, but they have a lot of powerful units at 1 health, and this will shred it, which is great. It's great against Spider aggro, for example, too. So it's just good against decks where you think it's going to be essentially like a board wipe. It's good against the mirror matchup, for example, because so many of our 1-drops die to it. That'll be great against the opponent if they're playing it. Zap is a great card to keep against Celestial decks or Ramp decks because eventually they should stall out the board or gum up the board in a way that you can't force damage through, but they'll have no way to block elusives. So the elusives should be able to force a fair amount of damage through in those matchups. So I usually like to keep one if I'm expecting that. And Zap can attack without being able to be blocked by a Radiant Guardian, so that can be pretty relevant in some matchups too. Jack is great against go-wide decks or really slow late-game decks because eventually they'll gum up the board and you won't be able to force damage through, so then you at least will be able to keep damaging every turn off of the Sleep with the Fishes. So I'll keep one against that, but you don't want to keep more than one 3+ cost card. You can keep like a 3 and a 5 if you have like a Jack and a Misfortune and you're attacking on turn 3. You can keep that, but generally speaking, you don't want to keep more than one 3 cost or higher. You definitely don't want to keep more than one 5 cost, no matter the matchup. We want to be fast in every matchup. Keeping that many late game bombs is just going to slow us down way too much and create a lot of bad top decks that are just like 1-drop that does nothing, essentially. Also, pitch any Decimates or Farron in your starting hand. There's no matchup where you really want those in the starting hands. It's just a better thing to pull off the top of your deck rather than start with. It's pretty slow to start, so you don't want to keep any of those in your opening hands. And that's the deck for this episode. You can find the deck code as well as a deck link in the description below if you want to try the deck out yourself. Now let's jump into some ranked matches. Alright, well, we'll be starting off, I guess, against Lee Sin Zed. So, this matchup shouldn't be the worst for us, although that hand is absolutely terrible. Man, do we even keep... No, we can do better than this. We can do better than this. We want to be fast and aggressive here and just win the game before they can do anything. Unfortunately, the Runeterra gods are not with us right now. Alright. Yeah, we'll play Jagged Butcher for sure. The question is whether we swing right away or we play Legion Grenadier first. Yeah, we'll play Grenadier first.
The spirit gives to those who listen.
Alright.
Victory at any cost!
The dragon binds us.
That seems bold. Oh, Pale Cascade? Okay. Alright, put it to 1. Put it to 1 and we still get the 3 damage.
Not done yet.
We forced our opponent to use a Pale Cascade this early though, so that's good. Man, Make It Rain would have been so good right there.
Looking into the future.
Okay, so that's gonna get it to 3. Yeah, we can't do anything about that, so I guess we'll just do this. Do we want to kill the Mentor? The answer is no. No, we do not. Man, that would have been such a good turn to have Make It Rain. That is tragic. Okay, we'll play Precious Pet. And we'll play the Saboteur too. This turn is going to be awful for us. Like, it's already terrible for us because he's going to block with Eye of the Dragon and Mentor. He's going to get a bunch of gems. He's going to cast the gems on Eye of the Dragon. He's going to get Dragonling next turn. So we're just going to have to deal more damage than these Dragonlings can heal.
Force is
Okay.
meaningless without skill.
So that's another blocker. But that also means he's not getting a Dragonling next turn. So that's the good part.
Act free of doubt.
So at least we have that going for us. I suppose this is the spot where it would have been good last turn to eat the Mentor of the Stones. Now we have to wait for him to attack before we can actually play Jack the Winner or Gangplank. Is the unfortunate reality, because otherwise Lee Sin will just kill whatever we play. Ooh, we did bank a Make It Rain though, so Make It Rain here is pretty good. Okay, don't play a creature. Don't play a creature. Don't play a creature. Don't play a creature. That's unfortunate. That is not what we wanted. What do you got? Zenith Blade. Yep. So,
I'll see this through.
this is weird. I think we actually play Gangplank now.
I rarely forget and never forgive.
Gangplank might die here, but he might also kill Lee Sin. Lee Sin doesn't level, right? Okay, we're good. We're good.
Prepare yourself.
Not all mean well.
And pull that. Alright. Blowout. Everything for him dies. He doesn't get Dragonlings next turn. We deal a bunch of damage to him. We have this other Gangplank in hand. We're just gonna swing with this. Hit him. Deal some extra damage. And we'll probably play Jack the Winner. Okay. Yep, that's fine. I mean, he'll probably hit some like Guiding Touch now at least, but we're pretty safe to play Jack the Winner at this point.
Lock the doors.
Ooh, double decimate's good. That's almost lethal. I mean, that is lethal, we just can't cast it this turn. Okay. That's not, that is not a problem.
Oh, yeah, that's a pretty sparkle fly.
So we will sleep with the fishes. Target Jack. See what our opponent does.
No use to lie.
Okay. Get some damage. Okay. What could he do in response to this Gangplank? Not a lot. I assume he's going to swing this turn because he has an elusive. So we will pass. Because if we just go to next turn, we can immediately sleep with the fishes. Okay. Yep. That's cute. Okay. Not bad. Not bad. I can respect that. But we will play this Gangplank. He's gonna make a keg, and then next turn he will also make a keg.
I rarely forget and never forgive.
I would say we're in good shape right now. I actually had a feeling he was gonna do that. It doesn't block a ton though, so he has to like deny the trigger, for sure. Like he has to deny the trigger, or else he's just dead. I think we're fine not playing the Misfortune before attacking here, because we're just looking to decimate. Because we can double decimate this turn, and he shouldn't be able to do anything about that. I don't think he even has an answer to this attack here. He has to deny the trigger. That's the only option right off the bat. Okay. That kind of works like denying the trigger. Okay. That's pretty good. That'll stop the Gangplank damage. Unfortunately, he dies to the Decimate, but our opponent found a way to survive the Gangplank. So, props to our opponent. Ooh, he leveled up Lee Sin. All right, GG. We will take the win there. This deck is pretty good into Lee Sin decks because of the fact that it does so much damage so quickly that it's pretty hard for them to keep up with it. I mean, our opponent basically had the nuts that turn, or that game, with the Eye of the Dragon and buffing it with Mentor and all that. They were in great shape to win there, and we still got it. So that's like, even from that position, they still can't win often. So, I mean, they couldn't really ask for better than that. Alright, mirror match. This ought to be interesting. See what our opponent's doing after the Petty Officer nerfs. Let's see if they're just doing the run back and seeing if Petty Officer is good enough or if they've made some change like us. Okay, Jack the Winner can be really good in this matchup. So I think I will actually keep this. And then I'll pitch Demolitionist because we're really looking to do Precious Pet into Grenadier. So we already have a good curve there. So we don't actually need her. Okay, well, the game decided we're going to have her. Bright side, this should deal damage this turn. Unless he's added warning shots to his deck and goes warning shot Butcher.
I have my orders.
Okay. That's a decent find for our opponent. He's not actually thinking about blocking, is he? That would seem so crazy. Alright, and we'll go into Grenadier this turn.
They'll never see it coming.
Are we willing to take that trade? That's the real question. No. Risky, but I think we can hold out. See if our opponent has a turn 2. Yep, that is one of the scarier turn 2s. Now I wish I traded the Precious Pet. I didn't think he would have a 3/3. Okay, well, that's a pretty good card.
Ready.
That's wild. Okay. Sure. We're fine with that. Misfortune. Okay. Well, then we'll go, since he played Misfortune, we will go Jagged Butcher, Imperial Demolitionist.
For the Empire.
Get a little more damage through.
Make the Empire proud.
And then next turn we'll probably Monkey Idol, although we could zap. It's debatable. I think we'll probably Monkey Idol though, because this isn't going to get any better the longer we wait. Ah, he is still running the Petty Officers. Oh, and he's gonna do that for the double hit. Okay, so we're just gonna make it rain. See what we hit. Ooh. Okay. All right. Okay, well he's lucky. Yep. All right. That was almost an amazing play for us. Yep. So I assume he's gonna swing with both, which means we probably have to block. We can't take all of this damage. That's the key. So we'll block one of them. We can't take 7 damage that turn. Well, we're all down to the same amount here. The question is, what can I play? What's the best play? All right. I don't like this play, but I think it is our best shot. Okay, Grenadier, yep. We aren't in a great position. I will say that. This is not the best place we could be.
Keep up, keep up.
Okay. Yup.
Like a fish in water.
Well, that's pretty good. That probably means we'll trade this zap. We're not necessarily trade. Well, I guess we'd rather fervor Precious Pet. Interesting. Interesting. So we'll block zap here and then Precious Pet to one of his 3 damage, and then we'll try to fervor Precious Pet to kill MF, I think. Although we could just go face with it. That might be even better. Because, I mean, this Misfortune is so far from leveling. We're not going to risk Jack the Winner. I think I'd rather take the 7 damage. Although, maybe we have to. Maybe we have to risk him.
Let's go.
We're still going to go face, though. We're an aggro deck. We need to be trying to win. See what he's got. I'm assuming Noxian Fervor and we lose Jack. Well, he is luckier than we are, unfortunately.
Never stop shooting.
That definitely sucks. We kill his MF though. And we still only take a certain amount of damage, so oh, we can't even sleep with the fishes. Ooh. Yeah, that's terrible. That is about as unlucky as that could have ever been. Okay. What do we need this turn? That is a start. So we can Imperial Demolitionist down to 4. Okay. That's sketchy. Does he have another way to kill us? So we play this, hit that, down to 4. This hits it down to 2. If we want to do that, we probably won't. Probably dead here, though. Our opponent probably has us. If they have any burn in hand, we're dead. So,
There's plenty of killing left.
and then we'll sleep with the fishes him. Deal a bit of extra damage. What does our opponent have? Any burn spell and we're dead. Actually, we died to zap, don't we?
Lock the doors.
So our opponent should just swing with zap. If he doesn't, or just use a kill spell. Yeah, okay, our opponent has it. There's like a million ways we were dead there, so our opponent got lucky. Our Make It Rain did nothing, or well, our Make It Rain was alright, but he had the other one, so it's just, yeah, our opponent got pretty lucky there. We almost had it, but he had enough early aggression, plus his Make It Rain turned out perfectly for him and bought him all he needed. Because that extra bit of damage might have been enough to win just straight up right there, so oh well, on to the next. Alright. Kind of the mirror match, kind of different. We're going to be a little more burn-based, they're going to be a little more control-based, so they're the control deck in this matchup, and we're just trying to kill them as fast as possible. We'll keep a Monkey Idol, and we'll keep the Saboteur, but we'll pitch everything else. Well, this isn't too bad. This is a pretty solid curve here. Yeah, that's a good curve. Let's see what our opponent has. They are kind of a burn deck, so they could have a 1-drop. Okay, we'll just go straight to combat. If he's running Death's Hand, then we miss out on some damage, but okay. Perfect. Get the full 3, then we can play Grenadier. Interesting. Okay, so he has Jagged Butcher. That's fine. Oh, he has double Butcher. Interesting. So he was debating turn 1 Butcher, but he decided to hold it so he could get turn 2 double Butcher. That makes sense. We're gonna play Monkey Idol this turn. Alright. Okay, Petty Officer. That's fine. We are not worried about that. And we're just gonna full swing this turn too. We're probably looking to Monkey Idol plus Jagged Butcher this turn.
You barnacle! You poor.
Maybe we should have held Grenadier back. But we're gonna push a ton of damage through here.
Damn it!
Nexus lives on.
So we'll play Butcher, then we'll play Monkey Idol.
Coins and carnage.
Bounty board.
Alright, so that'll be dead next turn, but that's fine. That just means we'll Fervor it next turn, to be honest. Probably. I mean, we might just play Jack the Winner, too. Oh, double Powder Monkey. Ooh, well, we could Fervor plus Saboteur. There's an argument for that. He might just swing with Daring Poro plus something that kills this. And nothing else, yeah. Yep, had a feeling he might do that. So if he's doing that, we're fine with that. We'll just play Jack the Winner.
Aren't any gods here? Just me.
And see what our opponent's got. Black Market Merchant, okay. I hope you like that card. So we'll get a Powder Monkey this turn. We'll just swing with it.
Promised a bloodbath.
Ooh, we could do a lot of damage this turn.
Ooh, got some fighting, yeah.
I know there's an argument to playing this Legion Saboteur, but I think that was our best play. Now the question is, will we sleep with the fishes, Jack the Winner? Or if we do it to someone else.
Never lost a fair game. Or played one.
Okay. Interesting. So I guess we'll just throw this, probably face. We're probably just looking to kill our opponent at this point. Okay.
Oh, people were
So I can do another 4 damage to my opponent this turn. Alright, so we will play this, and we will hit him.
War Mason, reporting for duty.
Hopefully our opponent can't kill in response. And then we'll sleep with the fish's Demolitionist. Now the question is, I don't know if we even play the Saboteur or not. Okay. So he's drawn a bunch of our cards. Twisted Fate is still pretty far from leveling though, and that's the important part. We're gonna play this Saboteur just to block.
I have my orders.
If he kills his own Twisted Fate, he can wipe our board pretty easily. That seems unlikely though. Can we kill our opponent this turn? Seems a little unlikely.
Explosives primed.
Oh, was that our Captain Farron? Wow, what were the odds? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What were the chances of that? I kind of want Jack the Winner to live. Let's see. So we block here, we block here, we block here, we block here. We take 9 down to 7. Seems unlikely for our opponent to kill us from there. We're actually going to sleep with the fishes before we play Gangplank. Because we don't want it to deal 3 damage. We want it to deal 2. And hopefully our opponent does not have an answer.
No use crying.
Because this is a lethal Gangplank trigger.
Bilgewater is mine and mine alone.
Suppose you still want me dead.
Not till you scream for mercy. Explosives.
Okay, TF isn't leveled up, so that's good. Ooh, another Jack the Winner. Alright, let's just swing. Give him the fewest chances to kill us with man out of hand. Yep, there we go. Alright, and we got it. That went a little bit better than the last BN matchup, so we will take that. A little sketchy, especially since he found our Captain Farron, which was one of his best draws there, but we got there, so we'll take that. No complaints. Well, I guess we're not going to get a terribly interesting episode of On the Grind, but mirror match, round 2. Let's see how this one goes. Hopefully a bit better than the last one. I think Monkey Idol's actually super good in this matchup. The question is, what do we... You know what? Honestly, I don't think we have any plans for this Butcher. We're going to go Precious Pet, Grenadier, Monkey Idol. So let's just pitch that and see if we find something that could be better for us. Well, we'll see if he has Warning Shot, Jagged Butcher. Otherwise, this is 2 damage. Alright, 2 damage it is. If he has no turn 1 play, that's super good for us. Alright, this is looking better than the last one. But anything can happen.
No one's the wiser.
The real question is, are we willing to block? Yes. Because we have another one in hand. So we'll take the 1, he'll take 1, that gets us closer to Gangplank, which is also great. We'll just swing with this Precious Pet. Push some damage through, then we'll play Monkey Idol. What's he got? Ah, that's rough. That is one of the worst finds for us, so... If we get a chance, we'll play this Grenadier. Okay. And we might play Demolitionist. We'll see about that. Fast leveling this Gangplank is really good for us, though, because we'll be at 4 this turn.
Who's gonna get in my way?
Unfortunately, we don't have a spell to deal damage to our opponent. Yeah, I mean, we'll just block like this then. I don't think we really care about trading. Yeah, we'll just block. We'll block like that. So we only take the 1 damage because we don't kill his Grenadier either. Do we play Demolitionist or do we bank the mana? There is a big argument to bank the mana here, but I think we might play Demolitionist, and then we'll just hit Grenadier.
Reporting for duty.
Because that threatens more damage next turn by swinging with 4 creatures.
Remember
Okay, no, he has Demolish too. But that does still threaten more damage
for
through.
the glory of Noxus.
It was tempting to bank in case we pull, like, Make It Rain off the top, or... Okay, well... that would not have worked regardless. What's our opponent's GP at? 2 as opposed to our 4? That's pretty good. Now, do we play Gangplank? I think we might.
Aren't any gods here? Just me.
Yeah, I mean... Although we could play Monkey Idol and bank some mana. And then we'll have 2 blockers next turn. Okay, you know what? That's the better play. Get our double powder monkeys. Ooh. I mean, we're not likely to play her at this point. His Gangplank's still a ways off from leveling. Ours, not so much. Yeah, we'll pass.
Let's do this. Strike at their
Perfect.
foundations.
Perfect. Double block like this. Take the 2 in the air. Because we can't do anything about it. Lose both our powder monkeys. And then play a Gangplank.
Your king has returned.
Make a powder keg.
Time to finish.
Maybe we should have lost one of these so we could have had our powder monkey. Well, it wouldn't have mattered. We would have either lost the keg or we'll lose the powder monkey.
He's started without me.
And I'd rather have the keg than the powder monkey next turn, to be quite honest.
Fighting's a
Because that makes his trigger even better.
done yet.
And we have full banked mana. So we're going to be 7 plus 3, double deny, or double decimate. Yeah, we are pretty favored at this point.
Got something for 'em?
Yeah, we'll just full swing, I think.
Blow 'em to the depths.
3 doll enemies.
And me. Let's go.
That has him dead. Anything else that blocks? Well, it doesn't matter. Everything on his board is dead regardless.
Why are you here?
In theory. What's he got? He could kill Powder Keg. That would be his best outcome. So he's going to try for it. Unfortunately for him, none of them hit. So...
Never stop shooting.
yeah. Alright. Yep. That should be game. I don't think our opponent has any other plays. They can't... They have to play a creature before they can sleep with the fishes. So, yeah. That should be the game. Ironically, Grenadier not dying is actually bad for us in that situation. Let's see what he does. Should be GG, though. Yep. And that's the game. Alright, that went a lot better than the last one. Than the last mirror match went. So, we will take that. That's not too bad. And we definitely saw here how good Monkey Idol could be. This is a great Monkey Idol deck. It's actually pretty good for the mirror match. It wasn't enough in the first one, but in this one, as we saw, like, it gives us all these great blockers. And even with that one, they weren't doing any damage. Misfortune was just gunning them down, but they kept damaging their nexus, so we got a super fast Gangplank. We could have even had it a little bit sooner, but yeah, it was an incredibly fast Gangplank, and the first Gangplank will definitely win the mirror matchup. I mean, not 100% of the time, obviously. There's some exceptions, but it will usually win the matchup. So, all right, perfect. That's a 3-1 so far. We'll see how we do in the last one. All right, Nightfall aggro. Trying to remember how this has historically gone. Is it 50-50? I've only played it a couple of times. I won the first game against them. Key here is to go super fast, I think. It's tempting to keep one Jack, though. We'll definitely keep this Precious Pet. That's a great start. Nah, yeah. We gotta pitch all this. We have to go fast. This is a matchup where it's just we're gonna have to be faster than our opponent. Monkey Idol could be good. We'll see, though. We'll definitely play this Precious Pet, though. Demolitionist is really bad. That's unfortunate. Ooh. That, however... Let's see... Yeah, if he... Okay, so he has Unspeakable Horror. He should use it here. We'll see if he does, but he should. Okay. I assume he has it. He thought way too long about that. So he probably has Unspeakable Horror. He definitely should have used it there, because now we get the Jagged Butcher. And especially, okay, yeah, so I don't know what he was thinking. I assume he had it, but maybe he didn't. Maybe he had something else. That was definitely a spot where... It's basically, if he's choosing between Shadestalker or that, I can understand choosing Shadestalker, and he doesn't know we're holding the Butcher, but that was definitely a spot you wanted to Unspeakable Horror if you had it, and I'm pretty confident our opponent has it. Unless he was just thinking way too long about whether he was going to Stalking Shadows or not that turn. Which seems a little weird to do that during my combat step. But, okay, yep. That's not bad. I think we can safely assume that this Jagged Butcher is dead. So I realized that by playing this and hitting him, we guarantee he's dead. But I think this sets up our best following turn. Because I assume he has Pale Cascade in hand. He probably does. So he probably was going to kill this Jagged Butcher anyway, so at least this way, we get some value out of it. Or not. That's interesting. Okay. Oh. Alright, he doesn't have another creature. Perfect. So we should be able to get at least 5 damage through here. Good chance, like... Alright, so Nightfall aggro doesn't typically play a lot of healing. There's a good chance that he's added healing. Ooh, we get to kill the Diana too. Perfect. We got a lot of damage through there. And we'll play this Monkey Idol now. And bank too. We could Decimate here, and there is an argument for that, but I think we're better off playing this Monkey Idol and just having some decent blockers.
darkness hides in my path.
Oh, okay. I get it now. He wanted to get 2. Okay, I was gonna say that was a very weird play, but now I understand. We are going to play Gangplank.
Bless the faithful and sear the
We might wait though. Yeah, I mean we're at 20 health. We can risk it. Yep. Okay. We don't want to play Gangplank yet, because we don't want them to destroy the barrel. The barrel is pretty minimal for us, but we don't want it to be destroyed. So we're not going to be able to swing through with these units anymore. Saboteur obviously still has value, so we'll keep her alive. But we'll block like this. So we take the fewest amount of damage off Crescent Guardian, and we take no damage from the soldier. But with double Shadestalker plus this Duskbringer, we're not going to be able to get through with the irrelevant quote-unquote creatures that don't have any value on them on the card itself. So considering that, we're not going to worry about it. I think we just decimate here. Because that will put him to 5. And then we get our Gangplank trigger, assuming he doesn't have a way to kill Gangplank. Which I'm assuming he does not.
water is mine and mine alone.
Does he have Hush? Because the deck does run Hush. If we do get the attack, if he doesn't have Hush and we get the trigger, then that's 3 damage from the 3 of those, from Monkey, Saboteur, and Gangplank, which puts him to 2, and then Parlay gets him to 1. Oh, alright, there we go. Perfect. And that brings us to the 4-1. Not too bad. Not too bad. We'll have a lot more to talk about in the wrap-up, because I did play some more games than this. So there's a couple more matchups I've seen, and the record is a little bit different, but I'll also go over my record with the deck up until this point in addition, as well as what we are after the changes, and just review what I think of the changes we made. But 4-1 for the video, not too bad, not too bad. So let's look at how we did. I went, let's see, 4-1 in the video. But after the patches dropped, I did 9 games total. I went 5-4. So the win rate there isn't amazing right off the bat. It is a winning record, but still not by much. Although it's worth noting that was a little bit testing, a little bit getting used to, a little bit of warm-up games, and I hit Endure tokens twice in a row. And that matchup does tend to be much like Nightfall. It's just one of us will get there first, and we'll see how that goes. And then another one was to Lulu Shen. So I think there is a possibility that Endure Tokens is a bad matchup for us now. Hard to say. My opponent did have turn 2 Curse Keeper plus Ravenous Butcher, both games, and turn 3 Callista. So I was actually set to be totally fine as long as he didn't have Callista, or totally fine as long as he didn't have the Ravenous Butcher. But unfortunately, both games, they had it. They didn't do anything to find it. It just, they had it in their opener. So I think it's a little fair to say that that matchup might be better than that shows, since they had that perfect curve out there. But I could see that matchup just being bad for us. The Lulu Shen matchup was some of the most ridiculous luck I have seen someone pull off, which is one of our 4 losses on this patch, was that they had double Herald of Spring, they had turn 4, turn 5 instant level up Lulu from nothing, because they had like Mentor Lulu Shen Herald, I think. So they gained a bunch of life off of something that turn. I forget what, but they gained a ton. And they had Spirit's Refuge plus Tasty Fey Folk. Plus I had a pretty big punt but I have a feeling we were doomed anyways at that point because our opponent had healed up to full and we were pretty low because of how crazy their curve out had been for them doing damage to us. But I did swing with a Saboteur as well as a Gangplank, which caused Saboteur to blow up the keg so that I didn't kill Feyfolk with the trigger. But I have a feeling they had some way to protect him with Barrier, and they just didn't because they knew he would trade with Gangplank, and that was fine with them. So we did have a bit of a misplay that might have cost us that game, but our opponent had a crazy amount of luck. Like, they drew so much life gain, it was incredible. Plus, they had everything else that they had. They had, like, Flower Child, Shen, Lulu, plus the double Herald that I mentioned. Because I think that's what it was. They swung with, like, Mentor buffing Shen, buffing Lulu, buffing Mentor, buffing Flower Child is what that was. So we even traded with the Flower Child that turn, but it was ridiculous. I feel like that was pretty quick, but that could have been like turn 5, turn 6, and they just had enough to buy them time to get there. I can't remember, but we kind of had a bit of bad luck with our hand, and then our opponent had some pretty crazy luck. So that one's I am not ready to accept that as a bad matchup. Although, since it is Ionia Targon, they have a lot of life gain in there, so it possibly is. We played against Lee Sin twice, so that's 2 of our 5 wins, and that's just a really good matchup. I'm going to be real honest, that's just a really good matchup. Like, our opponent had so many good things in both games. They had so many good things going for them, and it still wasn't enough to win. Like, we just run them down so fast, and they have so few blockers. It's just, that's a great matchup. Unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of diverse games, because of the fact that it was just like, the losses were all Ender tokens, the wins were all Bilgewater Noxus, essentially. At least we got the Lee Sin game in there. We got the TFGP, which is a little bit different. As we saw, because they had that crazy turn 2 with the Warning Shot double Jagged Butcher. So, because we can't really run Warning Shot, it's not good enough for what we want to do. It doesn't deal enough damage, so we can't run it. But the TF variant, since it has a lot of Plunder cards, Warning Shot's really good for that deck. So they can produce crazy turns like that, although it still wasn't enough to stop us. So that was pretty good for us. And then Nightfall Aggro, I've only played the matchup, I think, 3 times in total. Yeah, 3 times in total, so this brings it to a total of 2-1. I think we're favored in the matchup, but it's aggro versus aggro, so if they're too fast, they're too fast. That's just how it goes. The actual win rate for this deck in Masters, just playing Masters, ignoring climbing to Masters, that was pretty high. If I remember correctly, I did really well in Diamond with it, but just in Masters, I've gone a total of 38 and 25 with the deck, which is a 60% win rate. I think it's one of the better decks in the format right now, but it is hard to say. We didn't see, and I'm actually very surprised we didn't see this, because since nothing got nerfed about the deck, I really thought we were going to see it, but the Fiora Shen deck is a really bad matchup for us. I'm trying to see exactly how many times I've run into that deck, but it usually goes very bad for us because they have a lot of ways of dealing with their stuff. They can level up their... Well, not just level up. They can level up and win off Fiora incredibly quickly, which we will have a very hard time dealing with. And they usually have answers for anything we can do to try and kill her. I've only played it 2 games. Okay, so 0-2 against it, though. But that is a pretty bad matchup. And they have random blowouts for us, like playing a Genevieve and then Spirits Refuging her, because that's like 10 health right there. So that matchup, I'm actually inclined to say, is pretty bad. The big reason I have played so much Bilgewater Burn in Masters is that the ramp decks are just so obnoxious with what they do, and this is one of those decks that just very consistently gets under that kind of strategy. But anything with life gain poses a big problem for us, and so the Celestial matchup is a little more coin flippy because they can heal a fair amount, and they can have stuff like single combat to deal with our units in time, or they can like get a Radiant Guardian, swing with it, hit with it, then single combat with it to gain even more life. At least that's been nerfed a little bit, so that should improve this deck a bit more. Also, the Zombie Ash deck has historically been pretty bad for me. I'm a little surprised by that. They might have just gotten lucky, but it's happened enough times that it's. I'm not confident saying that. I think it's a pretty rough matchup for us because of their ability to frostbite our big creatures as well as kill a lot of our creatures, and then their win can actually happen pretty quick. But all in all, this is a pretty good deck. I think the beauty of this deck is that it can kind of win any matchup because it's so aggressive, so fast. You're never completely doomed, no matter what your opponent is playing, so that's always a nice thing. Those are decks I typically prefer to play myself, whether they're aggro, combo, control, doesn't really matter. I like a deck where I feel like, no matter what my opponent ends up being, I have a chance to win. And this deck is great for that. So that, to me, is the biggest reason to play this deck, and why I like to play it, as well as the fact that, as you saw, our matches are pretty quick no matter what. So that makes it really good for grinding, whether you're trying to get to the next rank, or you're trying to go up in Masters, or whatever. You're just trying to get in a couple games at work on your 10-minute break or whatever. It's one of those good decks for that, because most of your games are going to be under 10 minutes. So thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more videos just like